Welcome, horror fiends, to another episode of Talking Some Damn Horror. Tonight, to promote the 4K Blu-ray box set of A Nightmare on Elm Street, we have the director of A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jack Sholder.
Hey everybody, happy to be here.
Jack, we really appreciate you coming on. Um, so if I heard correctly, so you didn't really pursue necessarily becoming a director. You just kind of evolved into this?
No, my goal was to be a director.
Okay.
My goal was not to direct horror films, and especially my goal was not to direct sequels to horror films because it wasn't a genre that I particularly liked. I was sort of like, old French cinema and Hitchcock and, John Ford and all of that kind of stuff. Orson Welles, of course. So I just kind of ended up here. I graduated from college. I never took a film course in my life. I started working as a film editor. I bumped into Bob Shea, the head of New Line, very early on in my career and in his career, and we became really close friends. And I used to do all their editing work for them. So
Hmm.
they were distribution companies. I edited anytime they'd have a trailer, they'd call me up and say, "Hey, can you come in and do a trailer for us?" And it was fun because you really got to see how a film was constructed. And a lot of their films were genre films. I mean, some of them were or action or kung fu movies. The
Hmm.
Sonny Chiba Street Fighter movies. So you could kind of see how they made things happen in the editing room that never really happened. And so th that was a real education. And then at one point, New Line just said, we've got to move beyond just distribution. We've got to start producing movies. And, at that point, in the early 80s, low budget horror movies were making a lot of money. And so they wanted to get in on the action and they felt that they really understood that market very well. And so, we were sitting around one evening, passing around a joint, and one of the guys said,
Where the best conversations come from.
Yeah, so many ideas are born from it.
yes, born and died. But one of the guys said, if we could make a low budget horror film, we could make a lot of money. So I went home and I came up with this idea, which became my first feature, Alone in the Dark.
Oh,
So
yes.
they said, Bob said, okay. I pitched the film. It was supposed to take place in New York City, but they didn't want to shoot it in New York City because it was too expensive and the unions and everything else. And then he said, I'll pay you so much to write it, and if we can raise the money, I'll pay you so much to direct it. I said, great. So I went off and wrote it. They couldn't raise the money. Then I got a call from Harvey Weinstein to see if I wanted to edit this horror movie called The Burning. So I took the job and I ended up learning a lot about how they work, from actually making it rather than taking it apart.
Hmm.
And after that, I went back and I rewrote the script. I added some, I tried to use what I'd learned, rewrote the script, and they were able to raise the money, whether because the script was better or because the timing was just, I mean, who knows? But they were able to raise the money. I went off and I did my first feature, and it didn't exactly set the world on fire. It actually got very good reviews, believe it or not, but just didn't quite catch on. And then the next movie that they did was Nightmare on Elm Street, and then the movie opened, made a lot of money that opening weekend. I think was the top film. And Monday morning, their head of distribution, this guy called Stanley Duddleson, cigar smoking guy, who could name every drive-in down the Mississippi River, said, "Okay, start writing Elm Street 2." So that's what happened. And Wes didn't write it. It was written by Dave Chaskin, who worked
Hmm.
in the distribution department of New Line, and he, uh, I mean, he was a good writer. If he'd had his druthers, he would be making a living as a screenwriter, but he wasn't. He was, he'd been working for New Line, and he had been working for New Line, and his wife was actually the story editor at New Line, or became the story editor, and so West was never really that invested in the script, and he objected to the idea of Freddy coming out into the real world, which
Mhm.
we could discuss. And so he bailed 6 weeks before, and they needed somebody to step in because they had a start date. The train was going down the track, and so I'd read early drafts of the script. I was one of the people that Bob would sort of sound ideas off of, and screen movies and say, what do you think of this? Should we buy this or whatever? And so he trusted me, and I knew about the film. I had actually cut a temp music track for screening. So I was pretty familiar with it on that level, and so he asked me to direct the film. And my first reaction was, no, I don't want to, be classified as a horror film director, and especially not a sequel to a horror film director. Of course, I wasn't directing. I directed my first film, and nobody was knocking down the doors. And a friend of mine who was out in L.A. working as a producer, he said, Jack, don't be an idiot. Nobody's offering you any movies. They're offering you a movie. The movie's going to make a lot of money, and you're going to have a career. And so, we made the movie. It opened. It made more money than the first one, which was unusual for a sequel at that time, particularly for a horror sequel. They always made less. And and I was off to the races. The phone started ringing, and I directed another 14 movies and some episodic TV and so on and so forth. So it worked out pretty well.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought Alone in the Dark up. I actually did for this show, I did a 80s horror hidden gems. And I devoted the entire show to Alone in the Dark. I love
Really?
Alone in the Dark.
Thank you so much, because
Yeah.
I love the film, and I think
it's
a really good
fantastic.
film. And it's kind of my attempt to make an art film in the guise of a slasher film.
Yeah, one of the better home invasion movies for
Yeah.
for me, and so many great actors. I mean, Jack
Oh, yeah.
Palance, Donald Pleasance, Martin Landau. I remember seeing this movie on Terror in the Isles. It was the documentary.
Okay.
I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in
Right.
73, so I grew up, and I remember seeing it. I was like, oh my God. And I just remember Martin Landau, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, and that maniacal laugh.
Yeah.
I love the movie. And any interesting stories you can share, from like working with those actors and making that movie?
Well, yeah, a lot, a lot. But
All right, which ones are you legally allowed to talk about?
well, I actually I can talk about them all, and I have talked about them. But just I mean, rather than turning this into a 2-hour podcast, I'll tell you there were a lot of great stories. I learned a lot from Palance. Palance could
Okay.
be very intimidating. He could be very
Yeah,
intimidating.
I could see that.
And he came on this he came on the second day. It was either the second day or the third day. I think it was the second day. Um, we shot the first day. Bob Shea came on this set at the end of the day, and he said we met Palance. He's really pissed off that he's in this movie. He was so pissed off he punched the producer, the line
Oh my
producer,
God.
and he really doesn't want to be in the movie. And I had like a panic attack. And they said, and by the way, you're having dinner with Martin Landau tonight, who just got into town.
Oh, all right.
So I walked into a liquor store, and I bought a fifth of bourbon, and I got a taxi, and the taxi drinking some bourbon to try to calm myself down. And he tried to intimidate, and I couldn't get to sleep because I was so worried. And finally, like about 3 o'clock in the morning, I said, you know what? I'm not taking any shit from this guy. I'm the director. I'm the fucking director. I'm not taking shit from anyone.
I love
And
it.
so, I was a guy who'd never directed anything for this shitty little company called New Line Cinema. He was supposed to be off shooting a TV pilot in Florence, Italy, and instead he's in Jersey. I mean, not to say anything bad about Jersey, but
That's okay.
We'll allow it.
yeah.
Let it all out.
But so he wasn't in a good mood, and and the first scene that we filmed was that walk and talk where he says, none of us are crazy, we're just all on vacation.
Yeah.
The long walk and talk scene that he said was too much dialogue, that he couldn't. It was too much dialogue for him to remember. And I said, well, Jack, we got to shoot this. We have no choice. We got to shoot. And he did it. First take, perfect. He nailed it. It was like beyond. I'd written the speech, and it was like beyond anything I could have imagined. It was so great. I said, okay, let's do one more. We did one, because I'd offered. I said, we can do cue cards. We'll break it up into little pieces, whatever you need. Did another one. And I said, I said, Jack, that was fantastic. And he looked at me and said, ah, you're full of shit. It was his way of saying thank you,
Yeah.
you know. And
Hey,
then, after that, we got along pretty well.
yeah.
But
He even started it
he was
off.
an amazing actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything he did just would surprise me. He was just so fucking good.
Even starting that movie off with like a dream sequence with Donald Pleasance, right? Almost like a precursor to, what you were going to do, years later.
Yeah.
Jack, in regards to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, you were talking about how this story went in a completely different direction than the original, right? So
Right.
bringing Freddy into the real world.
Right.
What was your thoughts about that going in a different direction and how that all came about? And
Wes was there developing the script. So it wasn't like someone wrote it and then, a year later they gave it to Wes and he said, wait a second, I mean, he was involved in it, but he, for Wes, this was like this was Wes expressing himself. This was who Wes was, in his, if you met him, he was like a college professor, a mild mannered guy, but his mind, was a little interesting. So New Line knew, here's what they knew. They knew that they had a film that made a lot of money. Bob loved the idea because, I heard about it when he first optioned the property, and he loved the concept. And so, the concept is this guy comes into your dreams and kills you while you're in, in your dreams. And he's this character called Freddy Krueger, who's unlike most of the people in the horror films, the killers, they pop up, they kill somebody and they go away. He's actually a character. He's got dialogue, and so what they knew was they wanted to make another film, a sequel, so they could capitalize, they could squeeze some more money out. I mean, the head of distribution said, if we can make 60, 70 or 80% of what the first one made, we'll be happy. We'll think that we did okay. And so they wanted to get a title out called Nightmare on Elm Street with a 2 after it, and a guy called Freddy Krueger who comes into your dreams. And that was it. There was there were no rules. There was no franchise. I mean, the Elm Street 2 was written with an ending, so there could be an Elm Street 3, God willing, that there could be an Elm Street 3. That was how they saw it. I came on and I just wanted to make a good movie. I was not trying to remake Wes's movie. I wanted to make a better movie, I only had 6 weeks to prep the film. It was a very complicated film for me at that time. I had a lot of effects that I didn't know how to do. I was living in New York. I'm suddenly in LA. I'm suddenly in Hollywood. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I got to cast the whole movie. I got to find all the locations. I got to hire a bunch of people.
Wow.
Fortunately, there were a couple of very good producers on the film that they'd hired, and the cameraman who shot the first one was doing this one, who was a great cameraman, a guy that I had wanted to work with on Alone in the Dark, but I think we couldn't afford him. So I was happy to have him. And I was just, I didn't give it, it's like, how can I make this script work? A lot of times I have, all the other times I've had time to have input into the script and time to really think about it a lot. But here I just, I kind of had to make the movie, and I didn't feel like the first one was sacred text, that was inviolable. And then I was just trying to make, and it seemed like, okay, the movie's good. And also the studio approved the script and everybody was happy with the script. And so, that was kind of where I was at. I didn't give it a whole lot of deep thought. I gave it it's not like I just said, okay, you stand here, say the dialogue, goodbye. You have to think about, what's the movie about, which I felt it was about teen sexual anxiety, and all these things happen. And the fact that he came out in the pool party, it didn't bother me. I mean, if you think about it, what does Freddy Krueger want? I mean, when you talk about, doing a drama, it's like you have a character. What does the character want? What is the character willing to do to get what he wants, and what is getting in the way, right? And that's kind of, a lot of the basis of drama. So what does Freddy want? He wants to kill these kids.
Yeah,
He wants
revenge.
Revenge, Freddy's revenge. He wants to get back, and he wants to kill, but he can only kill one at a time, because he's got to get into your head, your dream, and kill you. So what if he could get out into the world? Then imagine how many people he could kill.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you know,
He's vulnerable though.
yes, you know, if you look at a serial killer, you know, I mean, there's like a murderer, you know, I'm really pissed off at this guy and you go and you shoot him. But a serial killer, it's like, you know, they treated me badly in this school. I'm going to go and shoot everybody in the school, you know? So that's kind of like where Freddy's coming from. So if I can get out into the world, then I can do a lot, you know, I can do a lot more harm. I can get a lot more revenge and I can feel better, you know? Uh, so, it made sense to me, you know, and then he finds this weak, vulnerable kid who happens to move into the house where he did his mischief the last time. And he says, hey, you know, I can use this kid as a portal. Let me see if there's a way I can use him to get out. So it all made sense, you know?
Yeah.
You know, and I wasn't about to 6 weeks before say, hey, we have to change the whole ending of the movie because he can't, you know, that wasn't in the cards.
Yeah. I love the possession aspect of it.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's a possession movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And the effects.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing I don't get. Like, so at 11 years old, when the original movie came on HBO, I sat down with my mom late one night. She's watching this new scary movie that's coming out. She let me sit down and watch it with her. It happened to be HBO's premiere of Nightmare. And it screwed me up so bad. Like, the only reason I couldn't sleep that night is I was anxious to tell my buddies about it. So by the time I saw that, it was shortly before Freddy's Revenge came out. I guess if you're from Philly, I don't know if you remember Request TV, like the early days of pay-per-view. I remember seeing the trailer for Freddy's Revenge on that over and over. Finally, I had a babysitter who was willing to rent it for myself and my sister to watch. And as much as I love the original movie, I always thought this one was the scariest of all of them.
Yeah, Freddy was scary in this one.
Yeah, I mean, his look, like everything about it. And I understood even then the whole idea of, well, he came out into the real world. But again, it was like, as you put it, Jesse was the portal. He possessed him and used that as a means to come out. I mean, in the original movie, he got pulled out of a dream just by someone grabbing him. So who's to say? Like I said, I get the criticism, but the only thing I didn't get at 11 years old was the bar scene. I couldn't wrap my brain. I knew something was weird about it, but I just didn't get it. But still, it was a scary movie. That was the one that I lost sleep from terror.
You're not supposed to get it at 11.
And then a few years later, I heard whispers. Oh, did you hear about that movie? But even to this day, it's always been my favorite. Again, as far as a scary one, like I feel most, if not all of them, are entertaining. But yeah, I mean, you made the scariest movie of the franchise.
Yeah.
Well, New Line didn't really know that it was all about Freddy. I mean, they knew that, you know, like, you know, you have to have Jason or, you know, Leatherface or, you know, whatever, you know, you have to have like a good villain. But the guy just, you know, it's like he goes and he uses a chainsaw or a hatchet or, you know, whatever the hell he wants to use to kill people. And that was it. But Freddy is a character.
He's got personality.
Yeah. He's got lines.
Yeah.
You know, you just can't get like some stunt guy to come and say lines like that. You know, I mean, Robert Englund is a phenomenal actor. He's a really, really good actor. I mean, he's a character actor, but he's a really, really fine actor, you know, and, you know, just the first time he came on the set, you know, he would walk across the room and you felt that this guy there was power, like every step he took. And, you know, and if you look at Robert, he's not an imposing looking guy, you know.
Yeah.
But when he got into that character, there was something about him that was very, very powerful. But the problem with Elm Street 2, in terms of the script, was if Freddy can come out into the real world now, what's Nightmare on Elm Street? Because now he doesn't have to come into people's dreams. So it was a dead end.
Now it's Massacre on Elm Street.
Yeah, so that's it. No more out in the real world. He's got to only come out and, you know, here are the rules now. Because you know, they were ready to cast somebody else instead of Robert Englund because his agent,
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, his agent wanted more money. How dare him, you know? And you know, they said they didn't want to pay. And I actually thought later on, I mean, much later, because, you know, I made the movie and the phone started ringing and I didn't really think much about Elm Street for a long time, you know. You know, I was moving on, and So when I finally started to think about it, there was a 30-year reunion, and I met Mark, who I'd never really gotten to know at all. I mean, we worked very well professionally, but we never sat down, we never talked, we never hung out, we never had a beer, and nothing. And I started to find out about how the film had been seen, and it always had gotten a lot of. It was always like the ugly stepsister, and also with the whole gay subtext thing. And Mark took a lot of shit about that. He got a lot of hate mail and stuff like that, and he actually had a lot to do with I think turning the perception of the film around. And I remember 6 or 7 years ago, maybe, there's a podcast there. These two women who do a Nightmare on Elm Street podcast, and and the comments, some of the people said, well, they didn't follow the rules. He came out in the pool party, and one of the girls wrote back, you can't look at it as a cookie cutter copy. You have to just look at it as its own movie that has
Yeah.
And if you look at it that way, because after that, then there was a template, and then they realized, I mean, when they started screening my film, they saw that whenever Freddy came on the screen, people went crazy, and they realized that was Freddy. I mean, if you look at the original poster for Elm Street 2, there's no Freddy in the poster. There's like a hand with a claw. It says starring, and then at the bottom it says, and Robert Englund is Freddy. The next one is Freddy, and it's Robert, and Robert's got top billing. So that's kind of what happened. But I mean, I was just trying to make what I thought was a good movie, and I didn't have the only thing that New Line told me was make him scary, keep him dark, don't show his face, I mean, or keep his face in shadow. So the director of photography had a lot to do with that, and and Robert, I mean, he doesn't need a lot of direction.
Yeah, he brings it to life.
Well, and he understood it,
Yeah.
he understood the
There was that one part right by the staircase in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah,
They
the
have
brain scene.
Yeah, you've got the body and I've got the brain.
Yeah.
When I was a kid seeing that,
That is terrifying.
it is
Yeah.
terrifying. I was 8 years old when I saw that. That was terrifying to me.
Yeah, I pretty much remember everything shooting the movie, but I remember that scene very distinctly because there are always like certain scenes in a script, and you think, boy, that would be really great if we could really get that to work. I'd love to see that, but can I actually pull this off? And that was one of those. Kevin Yeager did all of the Freddy makeup because they were not happy with the makeup in the original, so they wanted to hire a new guy. And I found Kevin Yeager. I thought he was really talented, and he was a fine artist. He was a sculptor. He'd gone to art school, and so he did a beautiful effect. And Jacques Haitkin, the director of photography, he took a long time to light that. He used these little lights, I think called snoots. They're like about an inch in diameter, and they just throw that very, very narrow beam of light. So he could keep, he sculpted the light around him. So it was, he had to be, if Robert had moved 1 inch, it wouldn't have worked, but we took a lot of care to get that right. And also, Robert, had an inkling about the subtext of the movie, and he wanted to like really fuck around with Mark's character, and maybe with Mark too, but he was, the psychosexual aspect of it. He was really playing with that, he sort of like almost sort of caressing him in a way, and very close,
right.
intimate.
I always look at the Nightmare movies very heavy on practical effects, right? Like all of it got more and more as they went, right? And you kind of started that. Like Nightmare 2 had some real good practical effects. I mean, Freddy coming out of Jesse, like that whole scene, the knives coming out the fingers, just the shedding of the skin, right? That was an awesome effect. Was Mark Shostrom part of that as well?
Yes. So the way it broke down was that we had two teams. So one team was Kevin's team, and they were primarily Robert. They were primarily Freddy. So, he was the guy who did Freddy, and then some other things, but mainly Freddy. And Mark Shostrom and his team did the big horror effects.
Yeah.
So like their big scene was the scene where, Freddy comes out of
Love that
Jesse.
scene.
And because I'd been an editor, as a director, I think like an editor. So I think, you need this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece in order to put, like I could see all the pieces of the puzzle
Hmm.
and how that little jigsaw thing or that three-dimensional thing would click together. So I designed with Mark, designed all the shots because there are lots and lots of little pieces. It's like doing animation. It's not like you can just pull the camera back and have the whole thing happen. You have to do it in little pieces to make it believable. I planned it out. It was shot by second unit, but we were shooting in the old Desilu Studios stage, and we had the house built. Uh, and when you build a house, it's kind of like the downstairs is over here, and there's stairs that go nowhere, and then the upstairs is over there, and the stairs that came up, and it's all in little pieces that you then have to connect. So a guy starts to walk up the stairs, and then a week later, you shoot the scene where finishes walking up the stairs, and he's on the second floor. So they were shooting the transformation scene while I was shooting the second unit shoots all the stuff that does not involve the real actors. So they were shooting
Okay.
the hand. The stuff that involved Mark, I think I pretty much did all of that. But I was able to like run over there and check on them and make sure that the way they were shooting it, the way I wanted it to be. Not just where they put the camera, but like the thing where the blades come out of the fingers. It was like a cool effect. They had this thing, and they pull some wires, and the fingers would come out, or the blades would come out of the fingers, and they're all saying, "Wow, this is so cool." And I'm saying, "Wait a second, you're just filming an effect. This is not an effect. This is somebody's hand who's suffering intensely. Have the hand moving like somebody's, as opposed to just, And those are the little value added things that I think helped to
Sure.
to make that sequence work a little better than maybe somebody else who wasn't.
I wore out my VHS tape rewinding that one scene over and over and over again.
Those are really fun. Like, I mean, when you do like you go to your bandsaw, and you cut out a whole bunch of pieces, and then you take them and they actually fit together. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool when you get into the editing room. I When I edited the burning, you've probably seen it, but there's a scene where there's this
Oh, classic movie.
raft. The kids are on a raft, and there's a canoe floating, and
Hmm.
then the Cropsey jumps up, and he's got these hedge clippers, and this kid goes no, and he holds his hand up, and the fingers
It's chopped.
and the guy clips his fingers off. So I was on the set when they did that. So they had a hand. It looked like one of those things people have in a football game where they wave this foam hand. It looked like shit. It was the dumbest, shittiest looking thing you've ever seen. When you cut in 4 frames of just you see the clipper and these things flying, and you intercut it. It's like, holy shit, it works. So, those are really kind of fun moments when you're in the editing room when you put it together and you say, wow, it works. There are a lot of physical special effects too, which I had no idea how to do any of this stuff. And they said, oh, we've got this great guy. His name is Dick Albane. He's an old timer. He used to be the head of the special effects department, physical special effects at 20th Century Fox. And so I met the guy. He said, oh yeah, we know how to do all this. Yeah. And he was like a big monofilament kind of guy, all this old fashioned stuff where it was like stuff you could buy in a magic store, and this stuff called AB smoke. So there's a shot where this kid like grabs the pole and the pole fence in the pool scene, and it's red hot. And
Yep.
so you put the A on the pole and you put the B on the hand, and when the two come together, this phony looking smoke comes out. So it was that kind of stuff. I actually said to him, I said, so all you've worked on like hundreds of films. What would you say you're the most proud of? He said, I think the work I did with the Three Stooges. So that was comforting.
I mean, that is a nice thing to have on your resume. So,
Yeah.
actually, I was going to ask you, was there something in this movie, looking back, like, is there a particular shot, scene, whatever the case is, that you seem to feel most proud about? Like almost as if, oh my God, I can't believe I pulled that off.
Just as a shot. Well, you got the body. I've got the brain. I mean, that was a pretty good shot. The one where where he's standing in front of the flames and he says, "You're all my children
Oh,
now."
classic.
I
Yes.
mean, those are my two favorite parts of the movie. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that was an iconic shot. Like, I mean,
yes.
that's almost sums up the whole 7 movies, in a way.
Yeah.
I was very proud of the whole ending in the well, it was an abandoned steel mill, but the thing with all the pipes and everything, and I mean that was a lot of work.
And was it your idea to, because it's also, I think, the only one where Robert's voice is pitched down that low. Was
Yes.
that your call or
Yes. Oh,
I
really? Is the
approve?
voice lower in that one than it was in the subsequent ones?
Mhm.
As an editor, I spent a lot of time in mixing studios. A lot of times, I was like running the mix, so I knew a lot about sound. And I'd even cut sound for a bunch of things. And I wanted to get his voice to sound scary.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
we
it
fiddled
works.
It
around
does.
and
It does.
and that seemed to be the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So they may have dialed it back because after that, it was like Freddy doing one-liners and
Yeah.
stuff.
He became a jokester.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, there
it-
was
it-
always a creepiness about him, but again, nothing touched this one as far as overall scares.
Agreed.
And that voice had a lot to do with it.
So Jack, you do a sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street, right? And then 2 years later, you kind of pivot to sci-fi.
Right.
So, which is kind of a cult favorite now in the hidden. So
Yeah.
maybe talk about that direction, going from Elm Street, right? And then doing a sci-fi movie like The Hidden.
Right. Well, after Elm Street, I got offered like every horror film on the block, and I really wasn't interested. I mean, most scripts, period, in Hollywood, written by professional writers, are junk. Most of them aren't that good, really. I would say 50% of them are junk, maybe 60%, and then maybe there's 20% that are pretty good, and then there's like 10% where you say, "Wow, this really good." There and with horror films, probably 85% of them are junk, if not 90% are junk. And I really didn't want to do another horror film. I wanted to move into something else. And so, I basically spent the next year and a half turning stuff down. And then New Line came to me, Sarah Risher, who was the head of production, who actually produced all 7 of the films. Said, "I've got a script I think is perfect for you." And she handed me the script for The Hidden, and I read the script and it was like, it's perfect for me. This is like, I totally, utterly get this script. The action, the humor, the humanity in it, the originality in it.
Yeah.
It all just like, it's like, I got to make this movie. I got to make this movie. And I kind of saw it, and I was a huge fan of Sidney Lumet. I think Sidney Lumet is one of the more underrated directors. And the Sidney Lumet cop movies like Dog Day Afternoon and Serpico and Prince of the City, and he was the master of that genre. And I'd always always admired those films, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to do a cop movie? So I'd always wanted to do a cop movie, and so here was a cop movie. So I basically saw it as a Sidney Lumet cop movie with aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite opening chase scenes too.
Well, what happened was, Bob Shea came into my office when we were prepping the film. He said, "Oh, it's just another car chase. They're all this, I'd never done a car chase." And I said, "You know what, Bob? I'm going to make the best fucking car chase you've ever seen." And he said, "Listen, these Ferraris are very expensive. Let's do it with Corvettes." I said, "No, it's got to be Ferraris. You can't do it with Corvettes. It's not gonna have the same impact." And I had my assistant pull excerpt all of the good car chase scenes that I could remember from other movies. The best of which, by the way, in my opinion, is the French Connection.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that,
Oh,
Jack.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I studied that. And what the French Connection, a lot of these are about watching the cars. French Connection put you in the car. Now that's the way all these car chases are shot.
Yeah.
But at that point, it was about the cars, and then you'd cut inside, and then when you'd see the people, and then you'd see the cars. But with the French Connection, you were in that car, and
Shitting
anytime you were
yourself.
out of the
Yeah.
car, they had the camera in a place where you almost felt like it was going to get run over, And so that's what I did. I decided I was going to have one camera on the bumper, and one camera with the point of view of the driver, and one camera over the driver's shoulder. And we would run through everything, with that setup. And I did tests with lenses to see which lenses would make the car feel the most dangerous. And that's the one movie. I mean, I don't watch my movies that much, but sometimes I get invited to screenings. That's the one that I watch. I say, you know what, you did a pretty good job on that. There's not much that I would change. If there's one shot that I wish I had put the camera in a slightly different place, but aside from that, I'm really happy with how I did it.
I remember seeing it on the cover of Fangoria. The parasitic creature coming out of the mouth.
Yeah,
I remember that just like it was yesterday.
that was Kevin Yeager, and actually, that was the last thing that we shot. I mean, we shot everything, and then we were just doing that. And between Elm Street and The Hidden, they had developed this new kind of latex so that they could make these molds that were much, much more lifelike, because they did a lot of this stuff with like mortician's wax, and it looked it looked a little phony, if not a lot phony. I mean, it looked a little phony, but this new stuff looked very, very realistic. And I mean, even just a few years later, I mean, I would walk into these places and they'd have like a body line. You would swear that they could get up and walk across the room. I mean, it was every little stubble of thing.
Yeah.
But the actor whose mouth it came out of, he came in the room and he saw the head, and he said, "Don't ever show that to me again." He turned around and freaked him out.
And I know these guys are sick of me always finding a connection, but yeah, you have Kyle MacLachlan playing a federal agent doing an unusual case in the Washington area. Yeah, I'm just a happy guy anytime that comes together. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was the script was written before,
Mhm.
David Lynch. I don't, people have said, "Did you think David Lynch, copied you?" And I said, "No, I don't think he copies anybody."
Yeah, David's off in his own world.
As a kid, being 8 years old and seeing this, the first scene of the school bus in Freddy's Revenge on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, that freaked me out when I was a kid, because I would take the school bus and I would ever wonder, are we going to stray and go down the wrong road or go down to a desert?
It's a school a little creepy.
Right. So, thank you for scaring the crap out of me for most of my childhood, and wanting to get on the bus, because I never felt the same again after seeing Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad that it scared you. So, I got an email from Warner Brothers saying we're restoring your film. We're going back to the original negative and taking it into 4K, and we're redoing the sound in Dolby Atmos, and we'd like you to approve everything that we're doing. And I said, yeah, thrilled to do that, and happy that you're doing it. So I went out there, and they had scanned in 4K off the original negative. So the other stuff that's been out there, I mean, first of all, the quality of the 4K is much higher than anything that you've seen before, but also the material that they started from was also much higher.
Mhm.
Because a print that you see in a movie theater, you shoot the original negative, then they make an interpositive off of that, from which they then make internegatives, and they use the internegatives to then make the prints that go in the theater. They would never use the original negative to make the prints to go into the theaters. What if something happened, So you're 3 generations away. So now you're seeing the original negative. They did a great job. I made a few little tweaks here and there, like when the bus is going through the desert, we had this idea that they should take the grill of the bus and make it kind of look like an animal face with teeth, or a little bit, like a little Mad Maxy kind of thing going there, and there's supposed to be smoke streaming out of this mouth thing, but it didn't really work. Like, I mean, first of all, they didn't do enough to the front of the bus to make it like that. and the smoke was pretty lame, you know, and because the bus was moving so fast, a lot of it got dissipated. So I was able to kind of tweak that up because you know, with in the new digital world, you know you can do anything. You know, you can turn the sky, you know, orange. You know, you can, you know, turn somebody's eye pink and the other eye, you know, purple.
Yeah, just ask George
You have
Lucas. You can do anything.
yeah, just this sort of tremendous control. The real revelation was the sound, because we had mixed the film in mono because New Line didn't want to spend the money to mix it in stereo.
Never even
And
thought of that.
the sound was on an optical track. So I mean,
Mhm.
basically, you mix when you mix the film down, you mix it onto three separate tracks. One track has all the dialogue that's mixed and equalized and everything, and one track has all of the effects that are all mixed together and equalized and everything, and another that has all the music. So once that mix is done, you can raise one or the other, but you really can't get in. Like, you know, if you want to make the screech of Freddy's claws louder, you can't. You know, you have to make the whole effects track louder,
Mhm.
and then it's going to sound bad. But what Warner Brothers did was they went and they covered every sound effect in the movie, fresh sound effects. I mean, ones that were pretty much the same or very close to what was there, or in some cases slightly better. Uh, but that's done because when you sell the film to foreign territories, you give them what's called a music and effects track. It has everything in it except the voices, and not just like, you know, the door slam or the you know, the car revving, but clothing rustle, all these little things that you would never even think of, but that make it feel real. Uh, but so there I was able to get into a lot of stuff, particularly in that opening scene, and make the creaking and when Freddy's nails go across that I could bring all of these things up. Even like this silly scene with the parakeet, you know, where the parakeet goes crazy. I mean, you know, how do you make that good? Well, um, we did the best that we could, and Chris Young wrote a great score for the movie. But yeah, it was always, you know, it was always one of those things like, okay. And now they went in and we could bring up a lot of the sounds, and also what happens, like with the original track, you know, things kind of step on other things, so that it all kind of mushes together. But with Dolby Atmos, you hear everything. You hear every little detail. You can hear all the dialogue, and the music can be loud, but you still can hear all the other stuff, and you can still hear all of the effects. You know, whereas before, if you wanted to hear something louder in the car, they'd say, "No, you can't go that loud. We have to pull this other thing down," or, you know. But nobody ever said you can't go louder. You can't go hotter on this stuff. And so I was able to 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 really tweak a lot of, you know, like I'd say, hey, can we go back and find that bird sound, and, you know, the wing sound, and all this other stuff. And then of course you could really hear the music. You know, I was hearing stuff that I'd never heard before, the music track. And you know, I looked at the when we finished going through the bird scene, I said that looks like the birds from Hitchcock. This is incredible. And they had the original track on one of the tracks, just as a reference. And I said, could you just go back and play it with the original track? And it was, yeah, it was meh, you know.
It was a bird in the 80s.
Yeah, and you know, so it's the same scene, but it's just much. I mean, when you see it, you know, if you see it, you know, particularly, you know, if you play it on a system that has Dolby Atmos ability, it's going to blow you away. I mean, I had to reassess. You know, I thought I did a good job on it. You know, I wouldn't have ranked it among my maybe, you know, top three movies that I've done, but you know, when I watched this new version, I said, man, this is really good. I mean, it's definitely, you know, it's the same, but it's better.
It's enhanced.
So the viewers of this
I
new
mean, you know, a lot of the people that have seen it, at least, you know, things that people have sent to me, said, you know, I'm like seeing it in a whole different way than I was seeing it before. You know, it just has so much more impact. So if you liked it before, you're going to like it a lot more now.
the viewers are going to get a new listening experience when
Yeah.
they purchase this collection for sure.
Yeah, and we're actually going to be out, and I'm going out to LA at the end of the month. There's a thing called the Dark Matter Film Festival that they're
Mhm.
holding there, and there's going to be a panel with Robert Englund, Sarah Risher, who produced all 7 films, me, Chuck Russell, who did 3, and Rachel Talalay, who did what, 6, I think.
Yes.
6. So I think it's the first time that there have been 3 of the directors plus Robert plus the person who produced all of them on the same panel, and then it's going to be almost to the day, the 40th anniversary of the release of Elm Street 2, and so they're going to screen this new version on a big screen with Dolby Atmos.
that's
And
awesome.
I've never seen it put together. I saw the picture on a studio monitor, like a great big,
Mhm.
$5,000 TV screen, or whatever, the best money can buy is Warner Brothers. And then I heard the sound, but up against the uncorrected, the old version of the picture. So I've never seen the whole thing up in a big screen in a movie theater, which is, it was shot to be seen in a movie theater. I mean, like, I guess, if you have a big screen now, you have like a 72 or an 80-inch screen, and you've got Dolby Atmos, and you're sitting in a nice dark room, you can get that same experience, except you don't have all these other people sitting around you, which is also part of what's
that adds to it, right?
The reviews are out already, and it's the picture and audio are fantastic. This is a must-have for every horror fan, this collection. So we got ours on order. They haven't arrived yet, but for our listeners, go out there, pick up the 4K release of the Nightmare on Elm Street 7-film collection. It's available wherever you get your collections, your Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I know.
And we realized
there's something like this because I've burned through 2 VHSs of at least the first 4 movies, and my DVD's seen better days. And I just kind of been waiting for something like this to come out before I sprung for another set of.
Blow your mind. I mean, I don't know what the other ones look like, but I can only imagine that it's going to be the same thing.
But just to have that more enhanced, I guess, version of everything.
Really, all enveloping. I mean, because the idea is, you watch a movie that you like, that's a good movie that pulls you in, and you're in that world for those 100 or 120 or however long it runs, and so this really pulls you into that.
So no excuse that I already own single copies of it. Get this collection, right? Experience the different version. I do have a 75 and Dolby, so I'm looking very forward, Jack. I won't have the other people in the theater with me, but I'm gonna enjoy watching it.
Do me a favor, when you see it, let me know what you think.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
If you think I'm full of shit, let me know. That's
absolutely,
fine.
I will.
That's fine. I've been told before that I'm full of shit. So
I'm sure the way you're describing it is exactly going to be my experience. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm pretty sure that's going to be your experience.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty jaded about the whole thing, and it really just blew my mind. And also, my son happened to be in LA while we were doing it, and so he sat there on the mixing stage with me, and he was pretty impressed. So
I just had a random thought to a previous episode of ours where we have a guy, Kevin. He's like our honorary 5th member, and every week he'll throw us out a random question, just kind of picking at our brains. And one he had a few weeks ago was, how they're doing the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere in Vegas. That they had this whole experience there with that. And he threw out there, what horror movie would we want to see if they could make a version of that at the Sphere? And at least 2 of us said it's got to be like the Nightmare franchise. Now, I don't know how much muscle you have in Vegas, but if you could just maybe plant the bug to someone over there about getting one of these movies, I'll buy a full plane ticket tonight.
I don't have much clout in Vegas, but I have been haranguing the people at Warner's to go and take The Hidden and do the same thing. And okay. I know a lot of fans have been asking me, when are we going to see, this new ultra high definition, and the Hidden will just be that car chase will be mind boggling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think Alone in the Dark was on Blue. I think it released back in 2021. I think Shell Factory put it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was happy to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. When Danny mentions the whole bus scene at my younger years, I was more scared of someone escaping from an institution and invading my home. So
yeah, well, see, none of it scares me. For me, it's all like, I mean, for Elm Street, I mean, I don't know whether you find there's a lot of humor in there, but I mean, like the whole scene where the coach is being attacked by all the gym equipment, and he's just like chewing gum. He's just not reacting to anything, you know. I just thought it was hilarious. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff in that movie, and I just don't find horror movies scary. I mean, there are a few that I've seen that I've actually. There've been a very few that I've seen that I thought were actually scary.
What's your favorite, Jack?
Well, I thought The Exorcist was really scary.
I love it.
That was scary. I mean, some of the Korean movies that are coming out, I mean, I wouldn't say they're scary, but they blow my mind. Like Last Train to Busan. Have you seen
Oh
that?
yeah.
Oh, that's
Great movie.
fantastic.
Christ, what a great movie.
Great movie.
The Koreans are just, they blow my mind. What they're doing is just incredible, you know?
Yeah.
Jack,
So let's
we
hope.
yeah, we really appreciate your time tonight. I know we went a little bit longer. Than
Yeah, sorry, Michael.
anticipated.
A little bit.
Right.
But we're big fans of yours and your work. So we really thank you for coming on. What an excellent day for a podcast, and I appreciate all your time tonight.
Well, it was really great. It was really great talking to you guys. I mean, you're good interviewers, and you know what you're talking about. So it's always nice to talk to people.
Thank you. Appreciate that,
Yeah.
Jack.
And I like
Yeah,
talking to people from Jersey. like I'm living here in North Carolina.
There you go.
They don't have water down there?
It's like people say when they look at you with pity and they say, "Bless your heart."
Up here, you get the
Jersey, they
finger.
say,
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Here they
Yeah, in
say,
Jersey, we're not afraid to say "fuck you." Down
Yeah.
there, they got to be
I
passive
would rather
aggressive.
have somebody tell me to go fuck off than to say. "Fuck your heart."
Jack, I travel a lot for work, so when people hear my accent, like if I order like a coffee and I say coffee, it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, are you from New York or New Jersey? I'm like,
Yeah.
yep, you got it.
Okay.
We
Well,
appreciate you,
It was
Jack.
great talking to you guys. Thank you.
Pleasure.
very
Thank
much.
you so much.
And check out the new version, the newly restored. I like to say it's kind of like an old Renaissance painting where they clean it and they take all the old yellow varnish off, and you say, "Oh my God, look at that purple that's in there. It's so that color."
Oh yeah.
And we never saw that cat hiding behind the chair, and that's kind of what it's like. It's the
New and
same,
improved.
but it's just.
Oh wait, there was a cat that made the bird freak out. Is that what you're saying?
That's what happened to the parakeet.
Well, we can't wait to check it out as soon as we get our copies in. So
Thank you
Great.
for your time tonight, Jack.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys.
Broadcast completed.
You've been listening to What an Excellent Day for a Podcast. Be sure to come on down to excellentdayforapodcast.com where you'll find our entire catalog. And for your convenience, every episode contains a link where you can text the nerds. Want to throw some praise? Some critique? Perhaps you have a suggestion for a topic you'd like to see us tackle. But while you think about that, you can also check out the connections to all of our socials, including our YouTube channel. Give all them a visit. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with everybody you know. And for those feeling a little extra generous, there's also a button where you can support the show in other ways. Every bit of support helps. Well, that's it for this episode. And remember, stay creepy and keep talking some damn horror.